Whether you are single and ready to mingle or happily married, we've got your love life covered. It's Romance 101 coming up on Washington Full Circle. Welcome to Washington Full Circle. I'm Cecily Fernandez. DC is known for lots of things. We've got Capitol Hill, we've got power players, but what about romance? How does Washington compare to other cities when it comes to finding and keeping a soulmate? Coming up, we'll get tips to jumpstart your love life, and later we'll get the inside scoop on the popular Washington Post series Date Lab and learn why district residents are willing to bare their dating soul to the paper. But first, here's a look at what DC singles have to say about dating in the district.
Do you think the district is a good place to find a soulmate?
I think it can be. The people here are very passionate, and it's wonderful to meet people here, but it can also be hard because people are so committed to their work that it's kind of a mixed bag.
It is, because there are so many people of so many different types here that there's always something there. You just kind of have to not press it. You just kind of have to just wait for it to happen, because some people think they're going to find something specific. It's like, well, be flexible and you'll find it.
I think that if you are open to it and you, take advantage of all that the city has to offer, then yeah, it can be a really great place for you to find a match, find a soulmate.
I know that you can go to museums and stuff. I actually thought to create a dating bucket list for the summer. Just to go to all these different places that maybe I haven't tried or maybe my date hasn't tried. So whatever you can think of, you can probably do it here in DC.
I think it is in the fact that there are a lot of young professionals in the city from a lot of different parts of the country, so you meet a lot of unique and interesting people, but I think DC also attracts a certain type of person. And if you're not necessarily as ambitious or politically inclined, or working for a corporation or a consulting firm, then it might not be the best dating pool for you.
I think it's as good as places as any. There's an intelligent, attractive population of people, and yeah, I think it's a great place.
I haven't found my soulmate, I guess I could say, but it's definitely easy to meet a lot of people from everywhere.
Of course, I think it's perfect because in DC, everyone from all over the country and all over the world love to come here and check out the place, and so I think it's very diverse and it's perfect for something like that.
Joining me with our romance starter kit is love expert Marissa Nelson. I love that title. Love expert.
Thank you.
We have a lot to cover, so I want to jump in with for singles, and we heard from a lot of them, and they seem to kind of say the same thing, that in DC it is possible to meet a lot of people. A lot of young professionals, flock to DC. So once you're in that situation, maybe you're in a social setting, and you get introduced to somebody, and you are interested in them. What are some tips from taking it from point A to point B?
Sure. I always tell anybody that I talk to, especially with the singles that I see in my practice, always be yourself. I think a lot of times when we like someone or we see someone that we're interested in, sometimes the pressure builds within us and we don't always become or show who we are. I think it's really important to just, introduce yourself to them. Talk to them about the things that really interest you, the things that you're really passionate about, and ask them the same types of questions. I mean, that's what's really important into establishing that kind of connection, when people know who you are and you can get to know who they are as well.
But how do you avoid making it like an interview? I mean, because I think in Washington we're also, there's so many people who are kind of work obsessed, and we think in that way. So how do you let down your guard and make it more like a little bit more mysterious, and not so much like, I've done this, I went to this school, and like you would
avoid interview questions.
Exactly. Okay.
So avoiding interview questions, it's no problem to say, what your industry is, but really it's more about what are you passionate about, because that's far beyond your work life. Passion, includes health and fitness and love and the things that really inspire you, your family life, things that really interest you. So you don't want it to be an interview. You don't want to ask somebody where they went to school all the time. You know, you want to get to know them on a more personal level.
Right.
You know, so I would really lead with that foot. Be nice, be flirtatious. You know, this is fun. You're looking for a friend. You're looking for, and if it works out, you're looking for something more.
Now, let's say you get to that first date. What are some common mistakes people make on a first date?
Oh, some common mistakes I see a lot is talking about previous relationships. You know, if it didn't work out, it's okay if you just say, you know, if somebody asks you a question, yeah, it didn't work out, and keep it kind of simple and basic. But sometimes people will go on and on.
I'll tell you why it didn't work out.
I'll tell you why it didn't work out. Do you do that? I see that quite often, you know, where people interview their potential mates. You know, again, you don't want to lead with that foot. You really just want to be genuine. You really want to stay away from politics, stay away from previous relationship talk, and really focus on getting to know that person. What are their principles? What are their values? If they walked away from that table or from this experience, what would you want them to know about you? That's what I really want you to go out and date into the world, really with that sense of, what do I want them to really know about me?
And most importantly, who pays?
Well, it depends. This is DC.
Now, don't you think, I still think you ask, you pay, regardless of who did the asking. I just think that, don't you think that, you know, and never expect that there's going to be, that you're going to go Dutch or, you know, don't you think that's a golden rule? One thing we can stick by?
So, you know what, I definitely don't think chivalry is dead. I'm all about chivalry, but at the same time, I think that, you know, if somebody else offers to pay and you want to pay, then that's fine. But,
Okay.
you know, if somebody asks you out, and just say thank you and,
Okay.
and leave the tip.
All right. Great. Coming up, keeping the romance alive, even in work-obsessed Washington. Stay with us. Welcome back to a romantic Washington Full Circle as we continue to get advice from our love expert, Marissa Nelson. Marissa, thanks so much again.
Oh, of course, I love it.
Now, we were talking about how to entice somebody and some common first date mistakes. Let's say you've been in a relationship for a while, and I know you see couples in therapy who have been in long-term relationships. What are some common problems that creep up, especially in a town like Washington, where a lot of times you have two people who have big careers, a lot of work, a lot of stress, kids, mortgage, everything?
Of course. You know, a lot of things that I see personally is that people forget that relationships are intentional. You have to be intentional about love. You have to be intentional about romance. This can, if you're not, it really can affect everything from sex to tenderness to touch to affection. So it's really important for couples to keep in mind that, you know, you have to make the effort, you have to make the time, and you have to dedicate and make your relationship really sacred. So if that's a mandatory date night every week, that's something that I would really want couples to abide by. Really talking about the things that matter to them, really giving back to their relationships. How are you doing on affection? A lot of times, especially in DC, everybody's kind of running and zipping around, going from event to event, task to task. But it's really important to kind of slow down, be present. You know, when you're home, put your computer down, put your phone down, you know, stop accepting emails and tell everybody after 7 o'clock, I really can't unless it's an emergency, and really give that time to your partner. You can be in the same space, but you have to be present. And that's one of the things that I see that happens often.
I think that's a great reminder, because I think sometimes people expect that things should happen naturally. If the romance doesn't happen naturally, then something's wrong. But the reality is that it has to be a priority.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be a priority, and it has to be a priority for both people. One person can't be the one who's pumping in all the romance and the desire into the relationship. When that happens, it becomes really lopsided and people become very unhappy and resentful. So it's really important that both people put in the effort to be present with each other, to really see each other, to really value and be there for one another, so that that love is felt.
And that's always something so striking that you see, that people put so much effort in the front end in attracting somebody, and then later on in life. When you really could use that energy is when people are a lot less likely to really focus on that. And I think oftentimes in families you see that with parents most of the time putting children first.
Oh, absolutely. I see that often. And I mean, of course, they are beautiful little dependent children that you have to take care of and you have to nurture. But also you cannot forget to nurture your relationship. Your relationship is just as important. And just like a plant, if you don't give back to it, eventually it'll start to wither. And so that happens in relationships a lot of times, that you value your time as a family, but you really have to give that affection back to your partner.
Because don't you think, the kids are really watching and they're learning about what kind of relationship they will have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As parents, we are the role models for the way that children learn how to be and love and experience love and share love as they get older. So you want to be that example, and you want to have that in your relationship. Really pump up the affection, the appreciation. A lot of times we're so busy doing everything. We're so busy being all to everyone else at work and outside of our household that we forget that our partner does a lot of things day to day to help us, really just carry out our day-to-day life. So just to take a moment and acknowledge that and just say, thanks for making breakfast this morning. Thanks for making me feel loved and, great today.
Ooh, breakfast in the morning, that's a good one.
Really
So let's say, let's talk kind of worst case scenario. You've been in a relationship for a long time, it doesn't work, maybe it ends poorly, but you need to kind of prepare yourself to get back out there. What tips do you have for people following a divorce that are interested in getting back out there but maybe feel inhibited?
Oh, absolutely. I think that a lot of times the clients that I see that are really going through that transition, you're really redefining yourself. Once you come out of a relationship for so long, you were part of that union, and now you really are kind of trying to find who you are beneath and beyond that relationship. Who am I? And so some of the advice that I have is really kind of really learn who you are and the things that you want, the things that inspire you, and then be able to go out into the world. And you're not the stories of being divorced, you're not the stories of your previous relationship. You can really redefine yourself in a really wonderful way. So if that means going out there and getting online, or really kind of going outside of your comfort zone when it comes to dating and meeting new people, joining a new club, doing whatever is outside of that comfort zone, that's what I would really think that is going to be really great to build your self-esteem.
And today, we live in such a different environment for dating. I mean, there's so many options that weren't available even 10 years ago.
It's fantastic.
And it seems like the stigma that used to be associated with Match.com or any of these kind of sites has really dissipated. And how do you feel about all of the kinds of social media and all the different types of ways that people have now to meet?
I think that it's been fantastic, especially when it comes to dating. It's really opened up a pool of people that would otherwise not be available to us. I remember before I met my husband, I was dating, there was no Tinder. There was none of that.
I don't even know what Tinder is, but
it's the app. Okay. It is the app. But before I met my husband, there was no Tinder. Sure, there was online dating, but I really relied, I met him at happy hour. So for me, it was old-fashioned. So it was very different. In this day and age, I think that it's a wonderful tool for us to connect with different people. On the flip side, we have very limited information about that person to go off of. So it really is about, getting out there, but suspending your judgment and being careful.
Yeah. Buyer beware.
Buyer beware.
Well, Marissa, thank you so much for all your wonderful tips. We really appreciate it. Up next, we'll go behind the scenes at Date Lab. Stay with us. Welcome back to Washington Full Circle. Everyone loves hearing about blind dates, but you have to be pretty brave to go on a blind date arranged by the Washington Post and then have it dissected for readers to enjoy. But that's the beauty of Date Lab, which has lots of fans like me who consider it their guilty pleasure. Here with the inside scoop is Date Lab editor Christina Antonitis. Christina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
For people who aren't familiar with Date Lab, tell us how it works.
So we have people who fill out a Date Lab application online, and they tell us their likes and dislikes and sort of their type and what they're looking for in a date. And then we try to match them up with someone who matches their type. We send them to a restaurant, and it's just the two of them. They spend a few hours together, and then they talk to a reporter the next day, and then that appears in the Washington Post magazine.
And do they kind of fill out a form about how the date went, or it's just an interview situation?
It's just an interview, yeah.
Okay, because I know it gets pretty specific. They kind of rate the date in different categories.
Right, yes, we do. Well, we ask them to tell us, they kind of walk us through the evening as if we were there. So they tell us, what happened in kind of chronological order, but they also tell us what they thought of the person and, how they were feeling during the date. And then at the end, we do have them rate the date. So we give them a scale of 1 to 5, and 5 is the best, 5 is great. And then they give it a rating.
And I think that's what readers find so fascinating. I know that's what I find so fascinating is they really give a first-person account. So you kind of almost feel like you're on the date, and they give their, when I first saw him, I thought he looked really handsome in his, blue sweater, and I was very excited to, it really is this kind of vicarious pleasure.
Yeah, I think that is the thing with Date Lab, is that people can relate, because we've almost all been there at some point. Even if we haven't been in the exact circumstances, we can kind of place ourselves there. And also you get to learn a little bit about the two people, so it's kind of an introduction to two people you don't know, which is always fun.
And what goes into matching? I mean, in essence, the Washington Post is kind of being a matchmaker.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you look for as far as compatibility when you're setting people up?
So we keep in mind it's Date Lab, so there's a certain lab element to it where we're not necessarily promising the perfect match, but we're changing the conditions maybe and seeing what happens. But we're looking for compatibility usually, so we look for similar outlooks on life. Maybe do you laugh at the same things? Do you kind of want the same things out of life? Are you kind of approaching the world in the same way? And then when we're looking at applications, I'm always looking for a thread that maybe runs through both. So is it hobbies that you share, or religion, or maybe even past experiences, like you both were involved in Peace Corps or something. So something that you can bond over on a first date.
And what has surprised you while doing as Date Lab editor?
I think I've been doing this for a few years, and I think what surprises me still is just the unpredictability of it, that there will be times when I'm certain I have a great match and I'm so excited about it, and then something unexpected derails it, or it just fizzles and there's just nothing there. So that surprises me. I think readers are surprised sometimes that we have dates that go out and they seem like they really hit it off and it's going very well, and then they don't go out again. And
right.
I think readers get frustrated by that, and they're surprised.
They want the
they want the
proposal.
I'm not that surprised by that, because I think most of our daters are in their early 20s, and they might just be in a stage of life where they're not even, they're not looking for their life mate or anything. So, but I do think readers get surprised by that.
But don't you think that's also a part of the difference between compatibility, which is somewhat easy to find, and then kind of that spark, that romantic, flame that's a little bit more elusive?
Yes, we haven't figured that one out yet. Yeah, we are always trying to find what makes that spark. I do know that it is, to get from a first date, a blind date especially, but a first date to a second date, it seems like it is just essential. Like we don't have a lot of dates that end up with there being no romantic chemistry, and then sometimes they will try to go out again just to see, and it just doesn't usually develop.
So have you learned that it kind of has to be there from the get-go?
Yeah, for Date Lab. So not necessarily for relationships in general, but I think for early dating. So if you're never going to see that person again in your day-to-day,
you need to have some kind of pretty
there does
big
need to be something
electricity when you come in.
Yeah.
But Date Lab has had some success. Tell me some success stories that have come out of Date Lab.
Yeah, so we have some great stories. We've had 4 marriages that have come out of Date Lab, and then we have one couple that met. The guy went on a Date Lab date, and it wasn't a hit, but a woman read about it and thought she was a good match.
That doesn't count. No.
Yeah, no, I'm counting that. I'm counting that for half. So she suggested that they go out, and they went out, and they're now engaged. So
okay, that's great.
That's 4.5.
Well, I do want to tell you that I had a great experience where my daughter's teacher, a young man, did Date Lab, and it was a huge deal among the sixth graders, and they all brought in and I felt terrible for him. I thought the poor guy, he has to have the whole school bringing in the paper and reading the comments, and he was a great sport about it. Are you surprised how willing people are to put themselves out there in this way?
Yeah, I am. I'm very appreciative. I think we all at Date Lab, we're very appreciative because we know it is just, we're not just asking them to go on a date, we're asking them to then do something very public and also to go outside their comfort zone a little. We're asking them to talk about what they liked or didn't like about someone, and that can be a little uncomfortable, but they do it. And
I think everybody
appreciate
imagines being rated in that situation and having somebody evaluate you on how they thought you looked, how the discussion flowed, but people seem to be great sports about it. And do you think I feel like young people today, they're much more comfortable with kind of there's so much more social media. They put so much out there already. I don't think it's quite as much of a jump for them as, say, someone from my generation, where we're just used to being a lot more private about that kind of stuff.
Sure, I do think that's true. Yes, I do. And we recently started doing videos with Date Lab, and I found that
videos,
initially
okay.
we weren't sure. That's just a little more exposure, and we weren't sure how willing our couples would be to do that in addition to the Date Lab, magazine article. And they have been. They've been great. They've been wonderful. So it's really nice.
And lastly, I do want to mention, Date Lab isn't just for 20-somethings. You have couples that are older.
Yes.
Right, so this is...
We do, and we want more.
Okay.
So I actually am trying to match a guy now. He's 79.
Okay.
He seems great. He's wonderful. He likes to go out. He likes Latin jazz. He seems really
Perfect.
interesting.
Okay.
Right.
And we're going to make a match right here on Washington Full Circle.
Yes.
And so people can just look at the Washington Post to get information about applying?
Yes, there's the WashingtonPost.com/DateLab, and on that, if you go to that, there's an application.
Okay, and you may or may not find true love, but you'll have fun.
You'll have fun for sure.
Okay, great. Yeah. Christina, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
That's it for now. Thanks to all my great guests, and thanks to you for watching. I'm Cecily Fernandez. We'll see you again next time.